So let's begin in Matthew chapter 1. To the LDS, genealogy is important, not only in establishing family history so that temple rituals can be done, but to individual LDS people and their worth. Who is related to who is important in Mormonism, especially among the ruling class, as many of the Salt Lake brethren are somehow related to each other. In fact, if I have my data correct, the only apostle living today who's in the LDS church that is not related to another apostle there in the Quorum of the 12 is Richard G. Scott. Poor guy, he must feel very lonely. The deeper and the familial roots a person has to a noted or a stalwart LDS leader, the more impressive their LDS pedigree is viewed by other members of the church. But when we go to open the Gospel of Matthew, very first chapter, we come face to face with another genealogy, that of Jesus Christ. What's interesting about his genealogy is the amount of ugliness that's in it. Why would this be? Why would God, who could have had his only begotten Son, come through a pure line of very devout and good men, impeccable men of pure action? Why would he have him come through a line that's littered with moral failures? What do I mean? Well, in verse 3 of chapter 1, Matthew writes in the Lord's genealogy, and Judas begat Pharez and Zerah of Tamar. Do you know the story behind that? Judah, thinking he had prepaid to have sexual relationships with a prostitute, had unbeknownst to him hired his own daughter-in-law who was dressed as one in disguise. She conceived and bore her father-in-law twins. It was through this line and the first twin, Pharez, that our Lord came. I think we could even go so far to say that if Judah had not been involved with his daughter-in-law in this way, Jesus would have had to come through a different line completely. But he didn't, did he? Why? Drop down to verse 6 in Matthew where the genealogy is read, and it says, and David the king begat Solomon, of her that had been the wife of Urias. You're familiar with the story, right? King David, Bathsheba bathing on the rooftop, an affair ensues and David gets Bathsheba pregnant. What does David do next? He has Bathsheba's husband Uriah killed to hide the pregnancy. And then he marries Bathsheba and they have another son. His name, Solomon. And it is through this relationship too that Jesus Christ came. Why and what is God saying through this story? He was saying that we are not saved, we are not less of a people, we are not more of a people by virtue of our DNA, through righteous or unrighteous heritage of flesh, or through golden genealogies. These are the fodders for man-made myths and their kingdoms. But God sent his only Son through a heritage that was riddled with sin, into a world that received him only in a manger, and into a life where there was no place for him to rest his head. And then, as the lowest of all, filled with our sin, this world crucified him on an old wooden cross for all sinners, including people who think that their family history somehow makes them holier, more worthy, or more prepared to enter into the celestial kingdom. We get all this from the Word. And with that, let's have a word of prayer.